Let's talk about extremism behind bars with Dr Alan Mendoza. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Very, very good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, we saw this extraordinary story of this attack on 3 prison officers. I mean, it's an absolute miracle that certainly 2 of them, one stabbed in the face, the throat, one in the back, another also seriously injured, actually survived. But we understand now the hate preacher Anjem Choudary is suspected of having inspired this terror attack behind bars by Hashem Abedi. He's the brother of the man who actually set off that bomb and killed himself at the Manchester Arena in 2017, and obviously a huge number of other people as well, including young girls. But his brother was also a plotter. He's behind bars. He's already attacked another prison officer, and yet he was bizarrely left free to make his own food and attend the prison kitchen, was able to fashion a knife and to get hold of hot oil. What do you make of this story and the idea that he might have been actually inspired by a hate preacher also behind bars with him?
Well, the latter is entirely possible because Abedi and indeed Choudary were in a separation unit where they are kept away from other prisoners, but where they can socialise with one another. And indeed, they get all kinds of perks. They can have their cooking, they can play games consoles. They have quite a cushy life, apart from obviously not being able to circulate freely with everyone else. But it does mean that there's a very dangerous atmosphere within that separation unit, because these are the worst cases, the most extreme radicalised prisoners are kept there. And you can be certain, as we saw with the case of Abedi, they haven't changed their minds about things, and they will seize any opportunity to attack prison officers or do whatever damage they can do within the prison. And that, of course, does extend. Even their presence does have a radicalising effect beyond their walls, even though they can't directly meet with other people. So it's a very problematic setting, and this case once again shows that things are going badly wrong in our prisons.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Ian Atchison, who's been regularly on the show, he's a former prison governor, and he's advised the governor on how to deal with extremists behind bars. He's recommended that these units were set up to basically isolate dangerous Islamist terrorists from the rest of the prison community because of that. But then, bizarrely, they were given these sort of, basically these extra perks of being allowed to cook their own meals. I mean, it's quite absurd. The families of many of the victims of the Manchester Arena attack, essentially, these people should be held behind bars in a cell 23 hours a day and allowed out only for exercise. Well, they say people are saying with one prison officer. I wouldn't want to be that prison officer, I have to say. But actually, we need to understand that prison's about punishment. These are dangerous men. There is no evidence that people can be converted back from this level of extremist violence abuse. Every time that we're told that it's happened, it has been proven not to happen. It puts people more at risk. Is that the answer?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head here, Julia. The reality is that these people are so steeped in radical Islamist ideology, so convinced of their own mad worldview, they're never going to be brought back. No de-radicalization process is going to bring these people back. And, it's not a question of punishing them per se. They will not come out of prison anyway, these people now, given the length of time they're serving. But the question has to be, why should they be allowed any privileges? They should be kept in very strict conditions, commensurate to the crimes they have committed, and that they would commit again, crucially, Julia. That's the thing to remember here. And they should not be given the kind of privilege. And it tells you a lot about the, frankly, woke mentality of many prisons that this sort of thing is happening.
And that's part of the issue, isn't it? And we know the prison service is basically, I mean, it is an absolute crisis. We know it's been a massive lack of funding. It's one of the reasons why we had a load of people let out of prison last autumn, way before their prison sentences. Well, we know that's why we've got this absurd policy of people being let out halfway through their sentences. And quite bizarre policies, I think, in most people's views. And we know there's a massive shortage of prison officers. Often prisoners are kept behind bars in their cells, 23 hours a day. They're not doing anything useful, out of their heads on skunk. And basically, prison officers allowing that to happen because there isn't really any alternative that they can see. But it is interesting also how it does appear that prison guards who are still there have lost control. The governors have lost control. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, pointed out today that 45% of prisoners at one UK jail, that's HMP Whitemore, now identify as Muslim. Now, the vast majority of those were not Muslims when they went into the prison. They've been converted while inside. And there's this phrase, convert or get hurt. It's something that Tommy Robinson, aka Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, has spoken about many times. I mean, he's in solitary confinement while he's in prison. He's not a political prisoner. He broke the law. He's quite rightly behind bars. But he's having to be kept in solitary confinement because he basically will be a target of Islamist extremist gangs. But ordinary prisoners are routinely now being forced to convert to Islam or pretend they've converted to Islam so that they can maintain their own safety behind bars. That is unacceptable, isn't it?
Well, it's a dire situation. It's unacceptable is just the polite way of saying it. It's a truly disastrous situation that radical Islamists are getting hold of prisoners, vulnerable prisoners in many cases, and turning them to a very dangerous form of Islam that could then, lead to further problems once these prisoners come out, if they've been radicalized and brought into a very extreme form of Islam in this way. The second problem with this is that it shows that prison officers have indeed lost control of prisons. There was a move. Here's a well-known phenomenon, Julia. It's well known that this has been a process going on for the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. And there was a period when, prison governors looked quite kindly on this, thinking, oh, a bit of religion will be a good thing. It'll keep people under control, fine. But they did not understand that this was not benign Islam. This was radical Islam. It is anything but a very safe thing to be bringing people into. It'd be one thing if they were into Sufi Islam, for example, spirituality, but this is not what is happening. And so as a result, you're seeing a radicalization within the prison population. Prison governors initially co-opted these people along the grounds of, oh, it'll make life easier. It turns out, of course, it doesn't make life easier. It means that you're giving power to a certain group of prisoners who then exert greater control over other prisoners. And then you have this hierarchy within prisons that then will challenge the status quo, not simply in the prison, but beyond in society once they come out.
And most of them will come out. Yeah. Okay, so what do we do about it? Because we haven't got enough prison officers, we haven't got a lot of experienced prison officers. They're paid very low pay. I don't know why anyone would do a job where they've got the chance of being stabbed in the face or the throat by a prisoner. They've got, the conditions they're being forced to endure in their workplace, no one else would accept. How do we deal with it?
So again, this is the problem, isn't it? You've got to feel sorry for prison officers. They face a terrible situation. But part of the problem isn't it, that they have simply not been empowered by the state. In fact, they've been depowered by the state. The state has told them for years, oh, you can't do anything bad to prisoners. We don't want anything bad to happen, but you're not allowed to be tough with them. Yeah. You have to be kind. You have to show them every consideration, all the rest in this sort of way. And there is, of course, a case at the lower end that you don't want to be tough with prisoners. You want to rehabilitate prisoners.
And many mental health problems.
Is for. Exactly, and those things need to be handed out. But at the higher end, the people who are the gang leaders, the people who are in for very serious crimes, they should be having the book absolutely thrown at them. They should be punished severely.
But a lot of people, it seems to me, in the prison service and the justice service and across the board, probation and others, they don't really think that prison is about punishment. It's about rehabilitation. I think for the vast majority of people in this country, the number one point of prison is punishment. Second, and it's very much related to punishment, is deterrence. And dealing with rehabilitating people is very much a secondary issue.
Well, it is and it isn't. The rehabilitation thing is very important for those people who have only just touched the extremes of the criminal web. You don't want to have a situation, and prisons are all famously known as universities of crime. If you keep people in for no particular purpose, you end up simply criminalizing them further. There is a purpose for rehabilitation in prisons, and we don't do that well either. Our problem is we really have the worst of all worlds. We do rehabilitation really badly at the lower end. We try and mollycoddle the upper end, and as a result, we have this perfect mess of conditions where, as you say, who would want to be a prison officer? But it starts from the state. The state has to give the direction. The previous government failed in this. The current government is failing with this. And if we don't get a handle on it, we are going to fail yet another generation of not only the people in the prisons, but the people who then they come unhurt when they come out of prison again.
Absolutely. Can I ask you finally, we're asking people today about the front page of the Sun Observation poll showing that 2/3 of voters in red wall seats, the ones that famously went for Boris Johnson, from Labour to Boris Johnson in 2019, but back to Labour this time around, that they are saying that Britain is broken, is heading in the wrong direction. We've had a caller earlier, Stuart, actually, in the last hour, talking about how Britain's gone too soft on everything. That's what he thinks is the problem. What do you think has gone wrong with Britain, and what can we do to fix it?
Well, I think that the caller who said we've gone too soft is sort of has got the essence of what the problem is. For too long, we've allowed basically problems to fester. We have thought, oh, if we deal with problems in a very calm and kind way, we will end up bringing solutions that everyone can rally around, and that's the way to go forward. And we have not been decisive as a result. Now, I think there's always a place for calm thinking. There's always a place for being calm and cool and collected about something. But we need to have a return to some sense of leadership in the country. The previous government was kicked out of office because it failed to provide that leadership. This government promised leadership, and it's ended up having to U-turn half a dozen things, within a year of being in office.
Indeed.
Where is the leadership? That's a question, Julia. And that part of that is, we've been too soft on issues that have been allowed to fester for too long. And that you can go across the board on that. Look at British Steel, for example.
Yeah, I know. That thing is interesting how many people are making that point. Dr Alan Mendoza, great to talk to you, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you so much for that.